Hey ladies and gentlemen, welcome. So in this topic, I'm going to talk about clean URLs. How and why should we have clean URLs in our PHP project? Now, it's not every PHP project that you should clean up your URLs. The only project that needs URL cleanup is one where, let's say you're running an e-commerce website where you need people to search on Google for your site. So for as long as you want people to be able to search on Google to find your website, then it's better to clean up your URLs. So let me give you a few examples here. So normally in PHP, when you have your website like this, your link may look something like this one right here. So this could be the profile page, right? So obviously, this is the page you are trying to access. So that's your website link. And then you go to the page you're trying to load, which is the profile.php page. And then here you have a query string. So everything after the question mark is known as a query string because it has no effect on the file itself that you are loading. This is what determines the file. This part here is just information that the page itself can use. So in this case, we're telling the profile page that the ID of the user is 4. Now, these obviously are just variables which could be typed as anything. It doesn't have to be ID, but in this case it is ID, so that it helps us to know this is the ID. And this is the category here. So there's a number here and a number there. So the problem with this link, for example, let's say somebody is searching for a specific user from your website. Now, this information provided here doesn't tell us what the username is for this particular user. It's just an ID of 4, right? We can't really tell if this is John or Mary that you're trying to access. So this could be a problem. Then Google will not index your link as one that a user can search for when they're looking for John, for example. So instead, if in the ID you say something like John, then it becomes more clear what you're trying to say. This is John's profile. Just by looking at the link, you can tell this is probably John's profile. And in the category here, this guy could be a customer, right? Not a normal user, but a customer. So when you use text, it's always better. So even before you change your URLs to be cleaner, if you're using this type, it's always better to use text as opposed to numbers, because then your URL becomes more searchable. At least when somebody is typing for a customer named John or they're searching for that on Google, your link will rank better. So that's one thing to look out for. Now, the best, of course, is instead to do it like this. Okay, so instead we'll have this link. This same link is reduced to this. So first of all, we get rid of the .php over there. We get rid of the query string altogether. Instead, we just say this is a profile and it's a profile of customers. And this particular customer is John. So this is more descriptive than this one and much cleaner. So the reason, this one, I'm not sure if this would rank any higher than this one on Google SEO or search engine optimization. But if there are two results that come up and the user is about to click on Google, one link looks like this, the other looks like this, the user is more likely to click this second one here because they can easily read what they want. It's easier to see here that if you're looking for John, this definitely has John as a customer here. So this is more likely to get you what you want than this one. This one, the user has to actually filter out the unrequired information. For example, they have to forget about the .php and the question mark and the ID and the equal sign just to get to John. And then they have to ignore this category equal to just to get to the word customer here. So there's a lot more brain power processing going on here than here. And this is why this link is better. The user is more likely to click this one than this one. So this one will rank higher just because more people click on it. This is exactly the same thing as in here. So here we have a product maybe. So here we say product is equal to shoes, category is equal to women. This could be better served as this link down here. Now, this final link is one I pulled from Amazon.com by doing a search for women's shoes. So the moment I search for women's shoes, obviously this link ranked higher because it's got exactly that in the link there. All right. So I searched for that and that was top of the list. Let me move here and show you that. Okay, so right there, that's where I got that. And the reason I bring this up is I want to show you that you can actually combine the best of both worlds here. So you see Amazon has this women's shoes in the link, but they have this /B, which literally means nothing. It's as good as putting a number there, but it's not a problem because this B has nothing to do with what people will be searching for example. So then you can save it as a number or some text. But then they put a query string at the end and still have something like IE and then all this information. This is the character encoding, I'm sure, because it's UTF-8, and then the node is equal to, and then they put a number there. We don't really know what this is doing on the page. Only Amazon can tell us what this is for, but the point is that at least they have the keywords in the URL there. That's important. You have to have the keywords or the title of your post in your URL at least, so that when people are searching for that topic, they can find it in the link itself. And then you can combine this if you want. For example, if you needed to know the page number, it's always good to just use a query string and say something like page is equal to maybe 4 and then you can put more items here. IE is equal to that and node is equal to that. So this is the final result that we are looking for to get something that is like this or just like that. Okay, so let's create a system that will give us this. So what I'm going to do is I've made sure that I have Apache running because this is important actually. This stuff I'm going to teach here will only work on Apache server. So if you're using the built-in PHP server, this won't work. Or if you're using Mongoose server, for example, or any server apart from Apache, this is not going to work. So I have my XAMPP installed here, and on the control panel, I have started my Apache service. You don't need to start MySQL because we won't be using any database here. We're just looking at the server itself. Now, the reason why only Apache will work is because we'll be using htaccess files, which manipulate how Apache works in that particular folder that the htaccess file lives in. So what I'm going to do is, now that I have my server running here, I'm going to go to the folder. Let's see XAMPP htdocs. I've created a folder here called clean URL. And in here I have an index page. I've added, it's index.php, but I've added a 2 there just to throw it off. So it's not just index page, because an index page has significant meaning on Apache server. So I'm going to drag and drop this folder in my project here. So we have that in there. Now, if I try to navigate to this particular URL, this is what I get. So it's localhost/clean URL, which is my folder. And then if I refresh this page, this is what I get. So I can see the index of this. Now, sometimes you don't want this behavior to happen. Let's say, for example, on your website, you've got an images folder. Now, the images folder is always public. You can't hide the images folder because your browser needs to be able to pull images from there. And as a result, that folder must always be public and accessible to the public. Otherwise, even your browser will have problems locating those images. So which means you can't really hide it. But if you don't want people, if somebody navigates to that folder where there's images, they'll see a list of all the images in that folder. But if you don't want that, the solution is to add an empty index.php page there. So if I rename my index page to just index.php, then what happens is that Apache will load the index page instead of showing the index of the page, of the folder, like this. So the guy, whoever is trying to access that, will just get an empty page because silence is golden, right? But if you don't want to use that, you can use Apache htaccess file. So let's right click on the folder and create a new file, and I'm going to save this file as .htaccess. So no name, it's just .htaccess, and just like that, it gives us a way to manipulate the Apache server on how it should behave. So if the file is empty like this and I refresh, I don't see anything new. We have the index2 page there. I've renamed it so that we see the indices. Now you can add options to this by just saying options and then put a dash and indexes like that, and let's save that. So the moment we do that, if I now refresh, it just shows me forbidden. You don't have permission to access this resource. So this is one way of stopping people from displaying indices in your page if you don't like that. So you can just have an htaccess file and put it in the folder that you want this action to happen. Okay, so once you've done that, that's some good security there. And let's go to the next line. Now, if you put a hash symbol like that, it means you have muted this command and it will not apply anymore. So if I now refresh, you see that the default behavior is back. But like this, we are running that like so. All right, so that's thing number one, right? Now, the thing number two is that what I want from the URL here is, if, for example, I type something like index2.php, then I will access the file that exists in there, right? But let's say I say index3, which I know does not exist, it will tell me that resource was not found. So what we want to do here, in order to clean up our URLs, we want to be able to type anything in there and it should send us to a specific page that we want. In this case, my page is index2. So what I want is for Apache to route every request to that one single page. Now the reason is that I want to be able to type any gibberish here. Because the thing is, normally what will happen is if I type, let's say index 2, if I type something like, let's say URL, and then I say home, like I'm trying to access the home page, and say /product and then /something, it will say not found because really it's looking for a folder that is like this in the project. So it's looking for a folder named clean URL. It has found it, but there's no home folder in there and there's no product folder. Now we can't afford to create folders for every URL that we make. So we're just going to fake the whole /this/that, because if you look at this, let's come here. Normally when you create a URL like this and you don't change anything in Apache, what will happen is that Apache will be looking for a folder named profile, because there's no .php there, so it can't be a file, it's a folder. So it's going to look for the profile folder. In there, it will look for the customer folder, and inside there, it will look for the folder named John. But we can't afford, we could, of course, just create these folders. But the problem is our files that run the project will be in the main folder here. So creating this folder would be a loss, because then we need to copy our files over and there. So we'll have several copies of the website, which is not ideal. So what we want to do is just fake this whole thing here. We want this look, but we don't really want Apache to look for a folder like this, right? We just want to fake it. So we're going to do that using the htaccess file. And how we'll do that is we'll tell the Apache that whatever gibberish we type here, doesn't matter what it is, just send it to one single page. Now you could make it in such a way that you tell it to send very specific requests to very specific files, but that creates a very complicated system from the start. So we want to just make life easier for ourselves and just tell it send to the same exact file, which will act as a router for our website, right? So what commands do we put here in order to do that? Well, we can use a regular expression to tell it that whatever you find that matches this, just send it to the index file. So now, before we actually change anything, let's see how the URL thing shows up in our index2.php. So I'm going to open this index2.php file, and we're going to do this. PHP. What I want is to echo some pre-tags just so my arrays look nicer. And then what I want to do is now print a readable version of the get variable there, like so. So now this get super global in PHP is the array that contains all the items you add in the URL in PHP. So if I were to access this right now, let me go back here to say index2.php. This is what you see in there. It's an empty array. Now, the moment I add a question mark like that, then I can add things to this array, and this is how we pass information to the page. So here, if I say id is equal to 2, then I will see that in this array now I have a key named id with a value of 2. And then if I put an and at the end and say and page is equal to 5, then we have those things. So I can keep adding stuff to that. So it doesn't matter whatever I want to do, like maybe that Amazon link had IE is equal to and then some random number, and that's what you get. Then you can use these in your PHP code to say, okay, the user is ID 2, the page is page 5, and so on and so forth. So you can put whatever you want down here. Now, let's see what happens when we we change some options. So the first thing we want to notice is that I'm not going to try and access the index.php file, the index2. So I'm just going to try and remove that to reflect a file that does not exist. So definitely index.php does not exist, and this is what we get. Now we want to avoid this. We want, no matter what we type here, we just want to load the index2.php. Normally it would be the index page, but I want you to see the effect here. So here what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'll switch on the rewrite engine. So we do that by just typing rewrite engine on like that. Okay, so let's go to the next line. In this next line, I want to put a rewrite rule. So I'm going to do rewrite rule like that. And so in this rule, I want to use a regular expression to match a pattern. Now in this case, it won't be much of a pattern. You could put things like, for example, you can say that I want A to Z, looking for any capitalized A to capital Z. I'm also looking for numbers and blah, blah, blah. Now the problem with this is this is okay, but it's too restrictive. So instead, what I want to do is just grab everything. So I'm just going to do dot star like that, which means just grab everything, from. So I'll put that and put that like so. So every character here. So the dot here just means any character, and then this one means 0 or more characters. So this just means grab everything in essence. But then I put this caret to say match it from the beginning and to the end. So the end of the string and the beginning of the string should match whatever I have put in here. So beginning to end should match. So if, for example, here I'd put 0 to 9, then it would just grab numbers. But here we're just saying grab everything. Okay. And then what you do, send that to the index2.php like that. So let's save this and see if it's gonna do anything. So clearly we don't have an index.php page, but we're trying to access it. So let me refresh and look what happened. We get some result here. And if you remember, this code is within the index2.php file, and that's not the file we're actually accessing. Now to prove that, I'll remove this whole index.php and just type some random text like this and press enter. You will notice that I still get the index2.php page here, regardless what I type in there. And notice that I still get the query string over there. But the moment I put the query there, and then I've got all of that stuff in my query string still, which is good. Now let's move this to the index.php because we don't want to be dealing with index2. So I'm gonna rename that to index.php and then make sure our htaccess is redirecting every request to the index.php page. But now let's try and do this. Let me grab this. I'm just gonna type a URL like, let's say, product slash shoes maybe, or maybe women slash women, like that. And now if I press enter here, the problem is that I have no way of accessing these variables here. So I want to be able to know what the user has typed in there. Is the link, does it contain product? Does it contain shoes? Is there women? If you see, the get variable here only works with stuff that I put a query string at the end and say maybe ID is equal to and their number. Then you'll see it there. Now this defeats our purpose because we don't want to use this method. We just want to grab these items here. So what I want it to do is that it should grab whatever it gets from there and shove it in the query string as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to do question mark and then put URL and say equal, right? So what I'm doing here is that I'm redirecting everything that has been typed here to this URL here. And if you notice, if I redirect to this, then I'm also adding a query string there. Okay, now I need to give it a value. So the value is going to be whatever I grabbed here. So I'll grab that by just doing $1 like that as a variable. So whatever the item, what I'm telling this is that whatever was typed here, doesn't matter, just redirect me to this URL. Okay, and the value here will be whatever was grabbed here. Okay, so that's what we are doing here. So we're redirecting to the index.html, but then we are creating this query string so that we can actually grab the content there. So now, because we had this and an empty, let's see what happens now. So look at that. So instead of having an empty, now we have the index.php, which is nice because actually this is where things are going. Now, instead of this, we don't really want this index.php page because it'll always be there, so we don't need it. So what I'm going to do instead is put a flag over here in brackets. I'm going to do QSA like that. Now QSA just means query string added, that's all. So we're just adding a query string to the end there. So if I refresh, now this is what we get. So we get the query string instead at the end there. So that's how we grab those items from there. So now we're getting somewhere. Now if you want to know more about how to manipulate Apache, you can just Google this, some Apache flags. This is one of the flags there, and some Apache rewrite rules. So you will get that information you need. So this is all good. And let's see now at the end here, if I put a query string and then put ID is equal to something, do I get that as well? I also get that as well. But the important bit is I get this part, which now I can use to manipulate. Now, if you notice here, it says URL is equal to. Now, the reason it says URL is because that's what I typed. If I had put any text here like ABC, that's what I would get. It would be inside the get ABC. So this is up to you what you want to type there. I usually use just the URL like this. So this is all well and good, but it's got a small flaw here. There's a slight little problem. So we're going to see the problem if we go to our desktop here. Let me just grab some images, right? I'm going to grab any image like this one. This is a PNG image, and I want to just put it inside my folder. So let me open that and let's paste. Now the reason I want to show this is because still in the URL here, remember that the way Apache works is it assumes any slash here is an actual folder. So if we put any images, it's going to assume that these images are within this specified folder, even though we're just trying to cheat here. So let's see what we're going to do. Now, if I try to rename this, I'm going to rename it to image.png. That way I can actually load it inside my index page. So just after this, I'm going to close my PHP tags and just put an image tag and say image.png. So let's see if we can have that image show there. Now, as you can see, the link to the image is correct, but we're not seeing our image. And the reason is simple. If we go and inspect the image here, it says could not load image. However, the reason this is not working is because it's assuming that the image, you see the image has a relative path. So the path is always relative to the current folder. So what's happening is that it's looking for the image within clean URL products/shoes/women and then /image.png. So it's looking for that folder, an image within that folder. So in order to fix this issue, all we have to do is put actual paths to the file there. Now, that's not the whole story though. The whole story is that we should here, remember that we're telling it that whatever we're trying to access here, always just redirect it to the index page. But images are also being redirected to the index.php page. So we have to fix that. So we have to tell it that if it's a real file that you encounter, then just load the actual file and don't redirect that request to the index page. So here we can put a rewrite condition. So I'm going to say rewrite cond like that. And then we put a condition in a %sign like this. And then we're going to do something like, so this is supposed to be request file name like that. Okay. Let's put a exclamation point -f like that. Okay, so what we're saying is that if this is an actual file, then we're gonna ignore this and just load the actual file. Okay, so let's go back here and see what that does. If I now refresh, it should show the file, but it doesn't still. So the reason is that it's still looking in that other folder. This would work though if I didn't have any slashes here. For example, if I just had the query string and the ID, the image would load, as you can see here. Now this image would still not load if, for example, I go to the htaccess file and remove this condition. Let's see if it actually loads. Who knows, maybe it will. Yeah, it actually does load. So that's pretty good actually. Okay, so let's put another rewrite condition. This time we're looking for folders. So just change the D at the end there and we are done. So that way, if it's an actual folder, load it. If it's an actual file, don't. So in this case, let me mute these so that we see the effect of not having these guys. So in here, what I'm going to do is do clean URL and create a new file and say this is some text and save this as text.txt. So now we have a text file in there, right? I just want to load that file. So what I'm going to do is this clean URL at the end. I want to load image.png maybe. Oh wait, look at that, it actually loads. Text.txt. Look at that, it actually loads. No, it doesn't actually. So you see that file here, text.txt. It actually doesn't load. Instead, it loaded the index page here because this is what you see there. So let me see. Okay. So it seems images get special status. They get to load. No, they don't get to load either, because as you can see here, it says image.png, but then it's still loading the index page. So even when I try to load an image, it loads the index page instead of the actual image. And if I try the text file, it still loads the index page. So we want to change that behavior by going here and removing that. So we tell it that if it's a real file, load that. If it's a real directory, load that instead. So if I come back here now, I should see the text file. This is some text, right? If I go back and load the image.png, I get the actual image there, which is nice. Okay, so let's go back to our original. Now here we are still failing to load the image, and that's because there's a /product/, so there's subfolders here, and this is the reason why. Now to fix this one is not using our htaccess file, but we just have to put an actual path there. Okay, so we have to put the local host path like so, and then say clean URL and then /. So this time it's gonna work, I guess. Let me refresh here. Oopsie daisy, it doesn't work. So let's try the HTTP. Now HTTP is important because then it goes through the server, so it has to do that. I don't know if I need double slashes there. I'm a bit rusty on these links, but yeah, I guess I do. Now you see the image load properly. So now it can be a bit of a problem for you to have to type full URLs like this, because if you go, for example, you change your server, let's say from your localhost to your actual website, then you have to change this part that says localhost to www.yourwebsitename.com and then / whatever folders come in and files there. So this can be a bit of a problem. If your site is huge, then you have to edit this. So instead, what we do is we create a constant that we can use. So here I'll define a constant like that, and then the constant name will be called root like that, and then I just put a value in there. So in this case, I'm putting the base URL in there like so. Now don't put the final / at the end, because usually your www website won't have a / at the end. So better to put that within the actual link itself like so. So that way all I need to do is concatenate this root to every image or every file and every link that I add on my website. So every link, every image, and every link to any file anyway should have that root put there. So it's as good as connecting this to the beginning of the page here. So instead I'm gonna echo that with PHP and say root, close it like so. So this way this is replaced by that, and so it makes sense now like so. That way if I change my server, I just have to change one place and every image is updated. So let's see if this still works. If I refresh, there's a syntax error on line 4. So it says unknown. That's because I didn't put a semicolon at the end there like so. And then let's go back and let me refresh. Now you see the image loads quite well regardless what subfolders I type in there like so. The image still loads. So keep in mind that we are still loading just the index page. So what do we do exactly with this? So now we need to dissect this. So this is something, a URL that maybe is talking about a product and shoes and women. So it's entirely up to you, the programmer, what you want to do with these values. These values are exactly just like ID is equal to 4, category is equal to what. It's just that you don't have a key value pair anymore. So it's up to you to decide that the first item that comes in describes the page name, right? In this case, this is the product. So at least we know this is always going to be describing the page we want to access, right? Good. The rest of these are debatable. That's up to you what you want to do with those. Does this describe the ID or does this one describe the category? It's up to you to decide. The best thing now to do is to create a function that will give you whichever of these you would like to figure out. So for example, we always know that the 0 is going to be the page, right? The item on 0 is going to be the page, which is the first item in there. So let's create a little function here. So what I'm going to do is up here, I'm going to create a function. I'm going to call it URL, capitalized like that. You can obviously call it whatever you want. So all I want here is to just grab whatever is in the URL and split it nicely so that anyone can I can request this at any point in my website. So here what I'm gonna do is, please keep in mind that the item we're looking for is this one, and it's always there in the array, the get array, as URL here. So if we just grab that, that'd be great, right? But keep in mind that if there's no query string at all here, like this, the URL disappears. So sometimes it's not there, especially on the home page, it won't be there. So you have to code for that as well. So what I'm going to do here is this. I'm going to say return. That's the value we're going to return. And we're going to do an explode like this. So what are we exploding through? The slash. So all I'm trying to do is I want to split this string, because this is a string, using at each point where there's a slash there. That's all I'm doing. And when I split, each of these items goes into one key of the array. So I'm splitting with that. And what am I splitting? It's the get variable in there, and then the memory location called URL, because that's what we put in our htaccess file here, right about there, like so. Okay, great. So that's all we're returning. Just return that. Okay, we return an array. So here what I'm going to do is echo out that function, print out the result of that function. Now, since it's a function, we have to put open close brackets like so. So let's see what we get. If I now refresh, you see this is what I get now. I get product, shoes, women, and that. Okay, now let me remove all this nonsense at the end, but I'll leave that slash there. Now if you notice, because of the slash at the end and it's empty, there's also an empty result here. So we can't have that. So what we're going to do is trim this guy right here. I'm going to say trim and put a closing bracket there. So the trim function here, I'm going to put a comma to tell it what to trim out. So trim just removes the specified character from the beginning or the end of a string. So I'm just telling it that if there's a slash at the end, just remove it so that we don't have this emptiness here. So if I now refresh, you see we get the right number. Even though there's a slash at the end, it doesn't make a difference. If I remove the slash, I still get the same result. If there's a trailing slash, I still get the same result. So at least I get 0, 1, and memory location 2. Now we always know that 0 is the page name, so we can use that to our advantage. So now if I want to find out, for some reason, I want to find out what the page name is, I'm just going to say echo page name is, and then here all I need to concatenate is the URL like that. Now the thing is, this is going to return the whole thing. So this is not ideal what we've done here. So what I'm going to do here inside, I'm going to put a key that is optional. I'm going to say key is equal to null, like that. Okay. So here what I would say is if not key. So if the key is empty, so no key was provided, it means I want to return, just like in here when I do this, I want to return everything. So I'm going to leave that as it is, right? However, if there's an else statement, now we don't need to put an else statement because return is going to exit the function anyway. So we don't need an else statement. If we get to this point, it means this wasn't true anyway. So we don't need to put that else statement. Here, what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to need to explode this anyway. Now, since I'm doing this twice, I would rather, instead of doing it twice, I would rather just say maybe array is equal to, and then do that explosion there. And then if not key, then just return the whole array. So I'm going to copy that. Since we've already done this, I'm just going to do that. Okay, great. But otherwise, if a key exists, then we're going to do return But first of all, let's try and find the, I can do this. I can just say return array key, like that, whatever the key is. Now it's possible that the key may not exist, right? So if the key does not exist, let's return an empty string. So I'm going to just put 2 question marks there saying, if this does not exist, just return emptiness, like that, just as a cure or a precaution. Now also remember that we can't trim this if it doesn't exist, right? So there's this get URL that may not exist sometimes. But before we even get there, let's see if this function just works as it is. So the page name is, I know that the URL, the item at 0, is always the page number or the page name. So here I'm going to refresh array to string conversion on line 16. So what that means is that we're trying to convert an array to a string. So 16 here, which is this. So return array key. Oh, wait a minute. Actually, the problem is 0 is also some kind of emptiness, right? So here, let's be more explicit. Let's just say if key is equal to null, like this. Okay, because 0 is not null, but empty is 0. 0 is empty, so that's why it was reacting like that. So if I now do this, oops, still having a problem. Page is an array, so it's returning the whole array anyway. So if key is equal to null, return the array. Key is equal to null, but on this point it's not. It's equal to, let me put a 1 there. Let's see if that changes things. Okay, so it's shoes, but that's not the page name. We want number 0 here. So if key is equal to null, how do I figure this out? Let's use if is numeric instead. Oh yeah, actually, let's do that. If not is numeric, like that. So if it's not a number, return the whole array. If it is, return this instead. So let's see if we've solved that problem. Here it still works, but let's try 0. I want item 0 there. Let me do this, and let's refresh, and there we go. So page name is product. So if I go here and change that to profile, for example, you will notice it will tell me the page name is profile. So just by changing what's in the link here, we can know what page to load. And so what you can do now, because now the disadvantage that has happened here is that no matter if you have a profile.php page, it doesn't matter, it will never load. So let's try this. Let me just say this is a profile page and save that. So here I'm going to say profile.php and save it. So even if I tried to load a profile page, if I refresh, it doesn't actually load because you don't see the text that this is a profile page. Let me also go to index here and remove this image because we don't need that. All right, so the definitions should be usually right at the top. So let's do that. Okay, and then once we have that, we have the pre-tag echo. And now what I want is, wait a minute. So here I can just change whatever I want, number 3. Now let's say there's an item that does not exist, like number 6. Then it will return an emptiness. As you can see, emptiness there, because I've tried to access what does not exist, but it doesn't show an error. So let's go back to 0, like that. And so all you can do now that we know how to grab the page number, you can just load the right page. So here, all I can do now is I can say require. I'm going to require a file. So require, we know that this represents the page number. So I'm going to copy that and put that there. And all we need to do is concatenate a .php at the end, like so. And that's it, really. So now if I refresh and do that, you see this is a profile page. So we are seeing that the index page is always running, but then depending on what the users typed as the page name they want, then we can just load that page by requiring it at the end. So here what I'm going to do is, let me just put some break tags, just so, in fact, not even that, let me just put h1 tag like so. This would be much better. Let me save that. So here we can do this. Let's say this is the profile page. Now if I type something, it's possible for me to type a page that does not exist. Then I'll get an error because it will say it can't find that file. So the best to do is, if I go here before trying to require the file, what I can do is just name this as a file name. I'm going to say file is equal to that, and then check if the file exists. So if file exists, file, then I'm gonna load the file like that. Okay, so let me do this so that I can have a brackets like so. So require, instead of having to retype this, we're gonna say file, and then we would say else, right? Now if that does not exist, we're gonna create another file to load, which is the require 404.php, which is file not found. So we just need to create a new file here and say, and call it the page not found. Copy that and paste it here. This is the let's say 404 page, like page not found, right? So I'm going to save it as 404.php and save it. So this is how you make a routing system. So if I now refresh, it says this is a 404 page because it can't find profile 3. But if I put it back to profile, it shows me this is a profile page. So that's how you can load different kinds of pages. Now if I go back to the index here and remove this part where I need to load these guys, and then now it looks like a proper what's this, a proper router. So there's profile there, then you can put one for the home page. Now there is no home page, so it loads the 404. So every time you load a page that's not found, it loads the 404 page instead. And let's just put one home page here just to be sure. So I'm going to put a home page. This is a home page. Save it as home.php. Okay, so in this case, since the home page is there, it will load the home page now. Now, one more thing is that if I remove all of these guys at the end here, just emptiness, then there's a problem now because it doesn't know what key URL is, because there is no URL. Then it loads the 404 page as well. But to avoid this error, on line 6, we go here, it's right here. We just put 2 question marks and put home at the end there. So what we are doing is we're saying if this does not exist, just assume that it exists and there's just one text named home. That way it always loads the home page when there's nothing there. So page is home like that. And so if I put /home, it still loads the home page. And if I put /profile, profile page, right? And if I put / let's say there's home, there's profile, and if I put some other thing that I don't know, it will load this page. So now you can even remove this, echo there like that, and now you have a proper index page that is also a routing system. So with this, now you have clean URLs that you asked for, and everything is good. Now in case you need, because you can combine, like I had said in this Amazon thingy here, you can combine query strings at the end. So if I happen to combine query strings, I can still do that, which will be evident by if I go echo and then put some pre-tags at the end here. So if I want to print what's in the query string, I just need to print the get variable like that, as always. So if I come back here and refresh, This is the 404 page, but it still shows me any query strings that are there. So let me just try on the home page. I'll get the home page, but if maybe let's say I'm on the profile page and I'm on a different page number, I can put a question mark and just say page is equal to 4. And I can still grab that from the get variable. So everything is still, you can still get your stuff, the regular stuff, from your get variable. But on top of that, you have this URL that contains that in there. So it's as simple as that when you want to do this. So let's say I had a link like product slash women slash shoes. This is, let me forget about this for now. Let's remove that. I was just showing you that those values are still there. So let's say I'm programming something and I'm on the product page and I want to access the very last value here so that I know what they're looking for. I know they're in women, they're in product, women's category, but what are they looking for? What product? Is it shoes? So if I want to grab that, it's as simple as knowing where to expect it. This is 0, this is 1, this is 2. So on position number 2, at any point, I can still just do echo and say URL, and I know I'm looking for something on position 2, then I'll be like that. Okay, now if I refresh, it shows me shoes. So then I know I have to get shoes. But if for some reason I put a position that does not exist, it will just return an empty string, which is still safe. It won't cause an error. Alrighty then. So this is how you would go about creating clean URLs in your PHP project. So now essentially what you have done is you have created a routing system. So your index page now is a router. So whatever you type there, this is the page that decides what other pages will be loaded, which page will be loaded, just so you can have clean URLs. Now, also to remind you that you don't need to use this method. You can just use the usual method for as long as you're creating something like, let's say, a point of sale, which users will never need to Google. So if this is your website is meant for the public, then you must put clean URLs. But if it's meant for specific users and people will never search for it on Google, then you don't need to go through this trouble at all. All right, so I hope you have learned something. Of course, I'm going to leave a link to the code in the description so you can check it out for yourself. And I'll see you in the next tutorial.